You're probably wondering what's going to make me laugh out of Alabama. Well, pretty much everything. But us, no, we don't have to follow those rules. We're the good guys. Could be worse than being a human Cheeto. You could be a clown that does porn. And whenever they say the word realistic, take a drink, you would probably be dead by the end of the night.
If he's not pissing you off, he's not doing his job. This is the Cynical Centrist Podcast.
Welcome to the Cynical Centrist Podcast, episode number 19 for September the 21st, 2019. I am the Cynical Centrist, live from my hotel room as I'm currently on vacation. Now, before I start going on the news here, I do have a couple things I want to talk about first. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was that use of the word SJW. Now, I am unsure if I've used it. I'm pretty sure I might have used it once or twice when talking about the Andrew Yang episode, or maybe I was talking like social justice progressives or something. I'm not quite sure. But I wasn't quite sure why people considered it a derogatory term because, as far as I knew, a lot of my friends from the past had called themselves SJWs or social justice warriors. And so it kind of confused me a little bit. I admit I was kind of out of the political game at the time. This was 5 years ago, I guess, when everything went down. Someone had told me that the term SJW became popular by the alt-right or people on the right. And guess what I was doing right around the time Gamergate became a huge thing? I was dying in the hospital. Now, I didn't want to talk about that because I felt like it would be a little bit too personal for the podcast. But for those of you that go back to my previous podcasts and might catch one or two of those, and I'm not even quite sure if I had said the term one or two. I might have said it. I'm pretty sure I said it one or two times. I'm not sure. But if I did, well, that's the reason why for that disconnect. In the future, I don't plan to use that term. Instead, well, I will say I'm going to put one exception to that, and that is if someone really pisses me off. Because I'm not trying to be PC, I'm just trying to show respect for fellow friends and opponents alike. Even though I am supposed to hate everybody, but even though I might hate everybody, I don't want to, let's just say, punch below the belt, so to speak. Unless I absolutely have to. So anyway, from here on out, I will be using the term social activist instead of SJW, with those, rare exceptions if someone really ticks me off. So I just wanted to say that on the top of the show. Also, the second big announcement, the Cynical Centrist Podcast is going to start having new episodes a little bit more regularly on Tuesdays, in a segment I would like to call the Tuesday Guest Talk, where I'm going to have particular guests from YouTube, from the political sphere, from Twitter, coming over here and talk issues with me. And I am going to have this Tuesday my first guest. Now, yes, I have had Jessica Canaday and Jonathan Munitz before. And here's a hint for you. They are going to be coming back as regulars. However, I do want to bring in other people as well and talk about certain issues that are important to them. Certain political issues especially, although I do plan to do some cynicism of life segments, possibly with some of the guests as well. But for my first guest, that will not be the case. My first guest will be, from Twitter's Aussies for Yang, Andrew Yang's mate, Shaylee. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I believe I did. I'm sure that she will probably scold me if I do, in fact, butcher that name in front of her. But she will be the first Tuesday guest talk, and we're going to be talking about basically Andrew Yang's international appeal and about the Shane Gillis controversy, which is exactly why I will not talk about it on this episode. So if you are looking for me to talk about Andrew Yang and Shane Gillis, sorry, you're going to have to wait until Tuesday. Now, let's talk about Beto. So for those of you that have been living under a rock, a lot of people think that one of the big winners of the debate was Beto O'Rourke when he talked about the shootings in Texas and his whole shtick where he was saying, hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15s. Apparently, his campaign loved this quote so much, they decided to put it on a shirt. Now, I know what you're thinking, and yes, At first sight, it does look like Beto O'Rourke is going to have sort of a bump in the polls. For a little while, it does look like he is coming back to 6th place. He's passing Andrew Yang for 6th, and I think he's scoring 4% on the more recent post-debate polls. So yeah, by all intents and purposes, he went from being near dead in the water to being just a little bit above a 3% average to hit 6th place. Great job. Now, why am I saying that this is probably a huge mistake by Beto O'Rourke despite this poll bump? Well, it has nothing to do so much with the primary, but it has a lot to do with the general. Let me explain. You see, Beto O'Rourke wants a mandatory confiscation of certain assault rifles, AR-15s, AK-47s. I mean, that's what the whole quote is about, right? Hell yeah, we're coming for your AR-15. So he's trying to act very aggressive, and I'm pretty sure this does resonate to a lot of people, especially in the wake of several mass shootings that have been reported by the media. But the question is, do people within his own party support this idea of a mandatory buyback? Now, granted, we do have, he's getting 3-4% support on these polls. So it is true that he's getting a poll bump because there are people who want these guns gone. And yes, he's not saying we're coming for all your guns. I completely get that. And of course, someone like me can understand, no, he is not coming for every gun. He's only coming for certain assault rifles like AR-15s, which, by the way, we're going to get to, have been canceled by Colt, and AK-47s and other assault rifles like that. What Beto does not realize, and his campaign does not realize, is that other people are going to look at, we're coming for your blank, and think to themselves, one, we're coming for your guns, because they see AR-15 and they probably just think gun in general. So we're coming for your guns no matter what. And that will really trigger the independents and conservatives who really believe in the Second Amendment, because believe me, they will want to start a civil war over this. Like, the Second Amendment is like the Democrats' version of abortion. You push that away from them and they are going to start going haywire. This is another big reason why I have said that we really cannot implement a lot of the strict gun policies that Europe does. That's why I feel like licensing is a really good solution in that sense. Or two, they are thinking that this will start a slippery slope. Okay, we're coming for the AK-47s and AR-15s. I almost said AK-17. I was like, what? AK-47s and AR-15s. What's next? Hey, we're coming for your 50 calibers. Hey, we're coming for your 45 calibers. Hey, we're coming for your 44 calibers, your 357s, your 30s. Pretty soon, the only thing that you'll be allowed to have are hunting rifles, and then they'll come for those too. Now, obviously, I don't think that we're ever going to see a time, at least in my lifetime, in the United States where something like that would actually happen. However, that is how some people think. And while this may help him out amongst some Democrats, there have been polls up that show that even within the Democrat Party, this is a very split issue. There was one Twitter poll that came up from Kyle Kalinske about a mandatory buyback. And he left 3 options. And Kyle Kalinske, by the way, is from the YouTube channel Secular Talk, for those of you that don't know. He put up on Twitter a poll of what you think about mandatory buyback, which he even says should basically be considered confiscation. Are you for it? Are you against it? Or are you kind of somewhat in the middle, or you don't really know? Now, this is out of 11,981 votes, and I'm not going to say they all lean left, but a good number of these votes definitely are amongst Democrats, and there aren't too many Republicans that really listen to him, and not too many Republicans that are going to go out of their way to troll this poll, especially since he kind of really kept it on the down low as it is. So I'm saying that this is probably about as close as we're going to get to a base amongst Democrats over gun confiscation, or what we call mandatory buyback. I guess gun confiscation, but we give you money for it. It's kind of like eminent domain for guns in a way. Yeah, eminent domain for guns. I'm actually going to try to coin that. It's eminent domain for guns. So anyways, 34% are for it, 41% are against it, and 25% are undecided. So a plurality are against it within the Democrats, within the political left. So if that many people are against it within the political left, what chance do you think you're going to have against independents and conservatives with Donald Trump? Think about that for a second. I mean, all Beto O'Rourke is doing is just getting some cheap pops now so that he can kind of get sort of a bump in the polls, but he's sacrificing his longevity of his campaign. And especially if he becomes the guy who makes it to the general, I guarantee you now, he is going to be the one guy guaranteed to lose to Trump. Well, I'll say almost guaranteed to lose to Trump. Yes, I think that he would have a chance and one of the few Democrat candidates that has a chance of winning Texas. However, he has really turned off the rest of the country. And the rest of the country, especially independents and conservatives, are going to remember something like this buyback, this mandatory buyback program, and be like, oh, geez, this guy wants to just stomp all over the Second Amendment. And you don't think conservative media organizations like Fox News or Breitbart are going to be all over this? Then you've got to be kidding yourself. And you don't think that they're going to use their propaganda to be able to tell everybody Beto is against the Second Amendment and Beto wants to destroy the Constitution? Then you are kidding yourself. If you make Beto O'Rourke the nominee, I guarantee you, 99% guarantee you, that he will lose the election to Donald Trump and we will have another 4 years of the annoying orange. I guarantee you 99% confidence that Beto O'Rourke will lose. However, there are some ways that those odds can be decreased that he would lose ever so slightly. And believe it or not, the person that could do that is the annoying orange himself, Donald Trump. Especially with the nickname that he gave him. I mean, dummy Beto? Really? Now, one thing that I would give Donald Trump for on Twitter is his mastery of nicknames. And he has come up with some good ones. He has come up with Crooked Hillary. I mean, that was one that it really resonated with the crowd and might have even contributed to making the election tilt in his favor. I think Crazy Bernie is not too bad either. I will say I am a Bernie fan, but I will say that Crazy Bernie is not too bad either. Pocahontas for Elizabeth Warren, I know a lot of people don't like that very much. A lot of people think that they should have called her Photohannes or something. Photohannes, that's what it is. But Pocahontas, hey, that works too. But lately, he's been kind of slipping. Now, when he revealed his nickname for Joe Biden, he went with Sleepy Joe. Right around the time that news stories came out about him sniffing women, and that was a little bit creepy. So you would think that he would go with Creepy Joe, Sloppy Joe, Glass Joe from Punch-Out's always nice. As a matter of fact, I'm using Glass Joe now. But Sleepy Joe? Really? I get it. He's kind of low energy. But there are a ton more terms that you could describe Joe Biden than Sleepy Joe. And I'm sure some people are catching on, but I feel like Sleepy Joe is just not a very strong attack. You should use, and this is just my advice, you should use Creepy Joe, not Sleepy Joe. That would be a lot more striking, especially since, as of right now, he is most likely your opponent. So if you really want to go at him hard, you're going to want to go at him with the most scathing nickname that you possibly can. But that being said, Dummy Beto. I mean, there are a couple hundred more nicknames I can think of. I rated a 3 out of 10 on Twitter, and apparently 900 of you liked that. And 900 of you, well, most of you anyways, agreed with that. I came up with the name Beta Beto. Or just plain old Beta. I guess there was one Ben Garrison, some comic writer, who made a racist caricature of the DNC, came up with the name Beta. Beta Beto, kind of like Coca-Cola, you know? I normally don't like using the red pill terms alpha and beta, but in this case, I mean, if you want to really kind of hit low with him, you know, Beta Beto would be absolutely perfect. Another one that I heard that I thought was pretty clever was Beto O'Rourke, which there's another one that he should have probably used. But Dummy Beto is like, there's no alliteration in it. No one quite knows what the context is. It really just sounds like a second grader insult. And if you really want to hit them hard, like I said, I'm offering a free lesson. If Donald Trump ever wants to tweet me and ask for a free lesson on how to insult people, hey, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I'll give one on this podcast right now. Your nickname, Dummy Beto, sucks. I have no idea if being president for the last 3 years has fried your brain or what, but clearly that is not a good nickname for the guy. There's no alliteration whatsoever, and it does not constitute or push the idea of him trying to take people's guns away. At least with Beto, you can probably throw the idea that, he's trying to take your guns away as him being beta or not being a real man, even though I don't agree with it. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure a lot of people are listening to this podcast and be like, why are you giving Republicans advice? I'm just trying to give you a more effective way of insulting people because I do it all the time. And granted, I make mistakes too. I have a lot that really do crash into earth sometimes. But Dummy Beto, there was only 1 or 2 names I could think of that could have been worse than that. So like I said, 3 out of 10, it sucks. Come up with a better name. Go back to the drawing board. And please, for the love of God, when you mention Andrew Yang or Cory Booker for the first time, don't screw up their nicknames. Hell, Andrew Yang has even given you sort of a handbook and a suggestion as to what to name him. He came up with Comrade Yang for you months ago. So please don't screw this up, would you? We want to make this election as interesting as possible. I mean, at least for the lulz. So anyway, I got quite a few more stories to go through. And before we do that, I would like to give a special thanks to Audionautics.com for the opening song and Pulsar Radio as well. Good friend of mine from back in Vegas. Pulsar Radio is spinning the latest in rock, punk, alternative, and more. And also he talks about hockey and wrestling and nerd culture as well. Go check him out Wednesdays and Fridays, radiovegas.rocks, or go to his Twitter and click on the link to download the app. Alrighty, so we have quite a few more things to talk about today, and I didn't really have too much to talk about in each of these issues, so I thought I would bring out a lightning round for today. And we're going to start things off with Israel. So there were elections in Israel for the second time in 5 months for Prime Minister. Benjamin Netanyahu was unable to get a majority government in Israel. Like I said, Israel elections run a little bit differently from U.S. elections. They do a lot of haggling with each other and a lot of alliances there in order to try to build a majority government, which Netanyahu was unable to do. And it is looking like he is going to fail yet again, and this time by an even greater margin. So much so, as a matter of fact, his time as prime minister is likely coming to an end. So let's rewind here. And if I do pronounce these names wrong, I do apologize in advance. Benjamin Netanyahu of the Likud party was facing Benny Gantz of the Blue and White party. Now, the way that Israel elections work kind of run in 2 phases. The first phase is the actual election where people vote for, I believe, their representative within parliament. And then from there, each of the parties, and there are quite a few parties in Israel, will tally up their number of seats, and then we find out if any party actually gets more than 51% to build a government of their own. Now, surprise, surprise, this almost never happens in Israel, so that leads to round 2, which is the coalition, the bargaining. So they will bargain with smaller parties in order to build that coalition that they need in order to form a government. And this is what was going to happen for Netanyahu, but he failed to build a government last time, and they're given 6 weeks to build that coalition. So because of that, that is the reason why we have the election that we do now. at least the second one in 5 months anyway. In the weeks prior to the election, Netanyahu really pushed that he had a strong relationship with Donald Trump, our annoying orange of a president. And it seems like that could have backfired. Now, Israel is a lot more favorable to Donald Trump than other countries. With other countries, he has anywhere between a 10 to a 20% approval rating in almost every country that I have seen, except for Israel. Now, Israel, he has a much more, well, it's a little bit more split, I should say. And it definitely showed in this election. The other big issue here is that Netanyahu is being involved in quite a few scandals, and he wants to remain prime minister so he can still have parliamentary immunity, and that is also at stake for him. And I'm pretty sure that did not help with the voters either. Now, this is interesting because Israel is a very touchy topic for a lot of people, and it's surprisingly touchy because a lot of people talk about how Israel has a lot of rights violations and a lot of abuses against Palestinians over there. It's basically kind of like a South African apartheid over there. And you have one side here in the United States who talk about that Israel is God's chosen people, so we must protect them at all costs. And having the Palestinians have any sort of rights would result in the end of the world. I mean, there's a lot of prophecy that goes on there. And the funny part is that in the past, I actually used to be a huge prophecy nut. And I can't even tell you a lot of what they're probably thinking right now. But what I can tell you is they are absolutely anal about Israel's existence. And it's almost like they feel like any sort of positivity for the Palestinians is going to result in the end of Israel's existence. So they cling on to dear life over that. And then you have the other side that is kind of a variety of things, from wanting just peace between the two sides, essentially, to all the way down to Israel doesn't deserve to exist at all. So you have them kind of pissed at Israel right now, especially on Netanyahu. Now, like I said, I don't know too much about foreign affairs all that much. I could barely describe to you how an Israel election works, especially right now since I'm on vacation here. And most of my time is being spent going out and sightseeing. You know, I mean, I could put in a couple more hours of research and take a look, and I might update next week over if Benjamin Netanyahu is considered the prime minister or not, or still remains the prime minister, I should say. But we can definitely see that it's not looking good. And I would like to go over kind of a lot of what Netanyahu did that led up to that. So I think we'll look into that next week, if at all possible. So we'll get to that then. Moving on. Area 51. Now, at the time of this recording, Area 51, there was this huge raid. I think several months ago, there was this meetup and a bunch of people with this idea, hey, we should raid Area 51 to go clap them alien cheeks. And I wasn't going to talk about this, but might as well. They had made plans to go raid Area 51 on September 20th, and there were a lot of people talking about trying to push for this raid. I don't know if it was photoshopped or not, but it became such a huge thing that they set up a date, September 20th, over in Rachel, Nevada. The people in Rachel, Nevada did not want them at all there. However, Las Vegas was willing to offer kind of a concert the night before. And then after that, you saw what was basically a 3,000-person protest in the middle of the desert. Now, granted, you had a couple people looking into storming the base, but for the most part, it was pretty peaceful and, well, I want to say peaceful, but they were pretty much protesting, and I still don't understand the internet, man. I swear. I even tweeted on this. It's D-Day. The D stands for dumbass. I was fully expecting some idiots to try to storm the base and get shot. And really, I don't want any harm to come upon people. Well, what am I talking about? I'm a misanthrope. Of course I do. But Not any serious harm anyways that results in death or anything. So I guess I'm glad it was relatively peaceful and whatnot. And for the most part, it just became one massive protest. Now, the hopes are that they don't do this again. But for all I know, with the success that it ended up being, with that many people coming down, I think they were expecting something like 100,000 people, actually. So that only 3,000 showed up wasn't quite as successful as they were hoping. But they could probably build it into some kind of an event later on and something that didn't really involve. I mean, they call it Alienstock. So, maybe they could create something now, sort of a yearly Burning Man or something, another Burning Man in a way, and try not to harass the security guards and the military of that base, if you know what I mean. Now, do I think that these people would have been dumb enough to actually cross the base? I'm going to be honest. Looking at the people online, and I'm just looking at my feed of mentions from yesterday, and I was talking with someone regarding the Southern strategy, and this guy, Republican, explained to me that the Southern strategy doesn't exist and I should read a book. So knowing that there are people out there that have their own little sort of alternate history, there is no doubt in my mind that there would have been people that would have been willing to take a risk if the guards were not there and heavily armed and were already there to begin with. Now, if there were no guards in the area, I think that we could have seen a few people storming and we would be talking about how there were a ton of people that died on that day. But people storming Naruto run style into the base, I mean, how do people come up with this shit? Seriously. Alrighty, so let's move on to the power rankings. If you guys do remember, about a month ago, I had something called a Democratic Debate Bubble Watch, and I said I was going to bring it over to October. Well, needless to say, there weren't enough people in the Bubble Watch for me to create sort of an October debate Bubble Watch, and also not much has really changed. Now, in the upcoming October debate so far, we have 11 people that will be taking part in that debate, Tom Steyer being that 11th person. And that leaves us with only 2 people remaining on the Bubble Watch, and that is Tulsi Gabbard, who still needs, well, I'm going to say she still needs 2 polls. I know there's a lot of Tulsi fans out there that say she only needs 1, but we are still not quite sure if that last poll that she actually had counted or not. And Marianne Williamson, who needs 3 polls. Everyone else is pretty much in a hopeless situation. So I'm going to go over the power rankings, and then I'm going to talk about any latest dropouts as well. So in the power rankings right now, sitting at number 1 still, obviously Joe Biden, who's staying steady. Moving up 1 spot to number 2, Elizabeth Warren, whose average is now solidly ahead of Bernie Sanders, who has dropped to number 3 on the rankings. Number 4, Pete Buttigieg got sort of a bump following the debate, and Kamala Harris having a dip following hers, dropping to number 5. Andrew Yang staying steady at number 6. And honestly, he's getting pretty darn close to that Kamala spot too. And after that scandal that Pete Buttigieg had with TYT Investigates, involving his firing of the first black police chief in South Bend, Indiana, Chief Boykins, Pete might not have his number 4 spot for very long. So you could expect someone like Andrew Yang to jump up to number 4 possibly, but I'm not really going to count on it, at least for right now. His debate, I know a lot of people say that he did well with his debate, and I'm pretty sure that he did. He answered questions very well, but a lot of people, what everyone's going to remember him on is those sweepstakes, and that really polarized him. And between that and a lot of other issues that he's had on the news, like a lot of people complaining about his joking about his own race, which, by the way, is absolutely dumb because people do that all the time, so why penalize him for it? But I get it. They see him as an outsider, so they hold him to a higher standard because of that. It's stupid. And he's fallen from a high of 3.3 average in the polls to a 3.0 because of that. But anyway, let's move on. Number 7, Beto O'Rourke, who got a slight bump in the polls following his... Actually, you could even make him a case for number 6 right now in the power rankings. And I get it. A lot of people had that bump because of the guns, but I guarantee you it's just a temporary bump. And he's pretty much written himself off. At least to me, he's pretty much written himself off for the presidential election, especially in the general. Especially if he's going to continue to push the whole, hell yes, we're going to go for your AR-15s. And I've talked about this at the top of the show. But it's not because of the AR-15s. It's that you have people that get triggered whenever you talk about taking their guns, period. So great job, Beto. You might have ruined your chances not just to be president, but possibly even if you wanted to run for Texas Senate as well. Moving on, number 8, Cory Booker. He's still staying steady. He had a really good debate performance. It's just that so did just about everybody else, at least according to the pundits. So he's gone at number 8. Number 9, Tulsi Gabbard, who is staying steady at a 1.0 average in Real Clear Politics. Despite not even making the debates yet, she is still staying there at number 9. And number 10, Amy Klobuchar, just hanging on, a little bit under a 1.0. Now, at number 11, we do have Julian Castro. Number 12, Tom Steyer. And then we have the rest of them down. Well, number 13, Marianne Williamson. And then from there, you have 7 people at the bottom. Or is it now 6? For New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio has exited from the race, saying that it just was not his time. And then there were 19. So there are actually 6 in the bottom there that will be waiting to drop out. Who will drop out next? Well, I put up a poll on Twitter, and it looks like at this time we have a tie between Tim Ryan and Wayne Messam, for those of you that think that one of those two is going to fall next. Now, if it were me, I thought, hopefully John Delaney's the one to drop out next, but he has talked about that he wants to continue all the way to convention. Wonderful. I wonder how many votes he's going to get. My money is on a little bit less than 1,000. So anyway, that is the show for today. Now, I kept this one a little bit short because on Tuesday, we're going to have, like I said, that Tuesday guest talk with Andrew Yang's mate, Shaylee. I will also be back at home base next week as well, so I can do a little bit more research, and I promise I will be doing the Israel elections and a little bit of a chronicle of it next week. And then if you have any other requests, just come to the Discord or, at me on Twitter as well, if you have any requests whatsoever, and I will see if I can talk about it then. My Twitter is @CynicCentrist. That is @CynicCentrist. See you next week, and remember, if I'm not pissing you off, I'm not doing my job. Bye, everyone.